Thank you, USD Chamber Singers and Dr. David Holthusen. Welcome. I'm Kirsten Johnson, Executive Director of the USD Alumni Association, and we're delighted you're here to help us celebrate USD's 150th anniversary. USD has a proud heritage of fostering student leaders, and tonight I'm pleased to introduce you to Yankton native Student Body President Alyssa Van Meeteren.
Hi there. Just a disclaimer before I start this. My voice is depleting very rapidly, so please don't laugh at me. It will make this just even more awkward. Okay. In establishing herself as the flagship university of the state of South Dakota, the USD founders implemented the traditions of pride, persistence, and progress that have carried this institution through her first 150 years. For a century and a half, students have been treated to a quality education within this school, in addition to learning the skills necessary for leading successful and meaningful lives. Tonight, on behalf of the current student body, I want to take a moment to welcome you all back and to thank you for creating the history and tradition which give this school its legacy and make it a home. My name is Alyssa Van Meeteren, and I'm the current president of the USD Student Government Association. For 3 years now, I have been fortunate enough to consider myself a member of the Coyote family. I spent some time this afternoon flipping through the history book produced by our outstanding Alumni Association. My, how things have changed. During my reading, I came to a couple conclusions. The first conclusion was that there is absolutely no way I could pull off the clothes or the hairstyles you guys used to don. And two, I decided that it would be almost impossible for me to attend a school that wasn't completely wired with technology. I can't imagine how you guys used to write a simple paper. I mean, going to the library, finding a book, opening a book, reading it, taking notes, and turning it into a paper. I mean, for crying out loud, all I have to do today is go to www.google.com and boom, research project complete. However, despite our somewhat different senses in fashion or means of doing our homework, I have no doubt in my mind that my peers and I would find a place in each and every one of the 150 student bodies that have attended the University of South Dakota. Changes in location, infrastructure, program development, faculty opportunities, and football fields can't change the fact that we, you and I and students to come, are all a part of the same Coyote family. A family that is rooted in tradition and excellence. Whether it's crowning a new king or queen each year at Dakota Days, attending a stroller show, which, as you all know, is a life-changing experience in itself, or picking up a weekly edition of the Volant produced by the future Al Newhars. Inside the classroom, USD professors uphold the tradition of grooming the leadership of tomorrow. Political offices throughout this state are littered with USD alumni. Pierre should have a special club for all the USD grads that have made the governor's mansion their home. I have been fortunate enough to spend a couple summers working in Washington, D.C. Amidst all the chaos that is the Federal Triangle, I was able to identify and work with a number of USD graduates, all of varying ages. And even though I was hundreds of miles away from Vermilion, in many ways, I felt like it was inside another USD classroom. In addition to fostering leadership in the classroom, USD has a tradition of setting new standards in athletics. I wonder what the current football team would think of playing along NFL stars such as Josh Stammer or John Kohler, both of whom graduated from USD. What would these football stars think of our recent transition to Division I athletics or the victory we earned over the University of Minnesota? They would certainly have a right to be proud of the team that served as a start to their notable careers. For 150 years, students have taken part in the tradition that exists within all departments on this campus. We owe you, the alumni, so much gratitude for building the foundation of excellence and personal achievement which has made our university thrive for so many years. Additionally, we thank you for giving us something to uphold and to push onward. Although we are separated in age and experience, perspective and opportunity, although we come from different backgrounds, chase different dreams, and find ourselves at different stages in our lives, at one point, we all received an official acceptance letter to the University of South Dakota. In doing so, we joined the Coyote family. Our school will continue to grow and achieve new successes, but it will never grow out of its tradition. Students will come and go, buildings will be torn up and recreated, and developments will continue to evolve. But there are some things at the University of South Dakota that will never change. We are part of something immortal, a place that has clearly withstood the test of time, a place that will continue to stand strong in years to come, and finally, a place that we can all call home. Again, thank you for building that home and for giving my peers and I somewhere to belong.
Thank you, Alyssa. Tonight, as we celebrate the university's sesquicentennial, you'll see that there are many former student body presidents back, Mr. and Mrs. Miss Dakotas, as well as former award recipients. We're also pleased that 2 former university presidents have been able to join us this evening. Please join President Abbott and I in welcoming back Richard Bowen and his wife Connie, and Chuck Lean and his wife Susan. President Bowen, who now resides in Idaho, served the University of South Dakota from 1968 to 1976, and Dr. Lean served the university from 1977 to 1982. We certainly are glad you're here and hope you enjoy your time back in Vermilion as much as we enjoy having you. We welcome them as the newest cohorts of Golden Coyotes. Representing the class in the parade tomorrow will be Tam Uliat Baker. She was crowned Miss Dakota in the fall of 1961. The classes of 1952 and 72 are also back celebrating their reunions. And we want to also recognize our parade marshals for tomorrow's parade. Tom and Meredith Aldbrook are with us. A special welcome to all of you. And I also want to welcome some new faces to South Dakota. USD Foundation President is here this evening with us, Steve Brown and his wife Anna. And as I mentioned earlier when I introduced Alyssa Van Meenderen, University of South Dakota has been a great laboratory for developing student leaders, and those student leaders go on to become state leaders, and we've had 10 university alumni become governors of South Dakota and also one in Iowa, and I'm pleased that former Governor Frank Farrar, student body president, also is here with us tonight. From the first university president, Ephraim Epstein, to today, each of the 17 university presidents have left their mark on USD. Second only to I.D. Weeks in his tenure, President James Abbott's impact on this institution is of historical significance, not just for the length of his service, but for the lasting impact he has had, the support he's been able to rally, and the pride that he and Colette have ignited in students and alumni alike. Thank you for your passion and your leadership, Jim and Colette. Tonight, we are pleased to present the 2012 Alumni Achievement Awards. The recipient of the award for service to the university is the late Roger Kozak. To anyone involved in the Vermilion and campus community during the past 30 years, Roger Kozak is a name you recognize. Roger first came to the university as a business administration student in the 1960s. but he was called to service in the U.S. Army. After the Army, he returned and earned his undergraduate degree at the University in Springfield, and came back to USD to earn his master's degree and subsequently 2 doctoral degrees. He began his professional career at the University of South Dakota in 1979, following a stint in Pierre with the South Dakota Board of Regents. During his 22 years of employment with the University of South Dakota, Rogers, and in his loyal volunteerism after his retirement, Roger was a faithful and ardent supporter of the University of South Dakota. Anything he became involved with, he took ownership in and saw it through to successful implementation. Those who have worked with Roger know he had a passion for this university and for this community, and his efforts on behalf of both led to true progressive partnerships in the town-gown relationship. Anyone who worked with him knew he had a positive and can-do spirit, and he ignited in them the ability to see beyond any obstacles that may be before them and to realize that the objectives were obtainable. Earlier this year, I had the honor of advising Roger he would be recognized with this award, and his response was what we have come to know of Roger. It was humble, gracious, and infused with pride in his association with this institution. Roger lost his battle with cancer just several weeks ago, but the work and the impact of his leadership will not soon be forgotten. Accepting the award on behalf of Roger is Dave Lorenz.
Thank you. Well, it's my privilege to accept this award on behalf of the Kozak family and in honor of my friend Roger. This is going to sound a little similar to what Kirsten just said, but I was visiting with Roger shortly after she had notified him that he was receiving the award. And in his typical way of reacting, he was very delighted, and he was honored to have been named a recipient. But he immediately started to think of all the other people that were more deserving than he was. Always the eternal optimist. He said to me at that time, "Now, Dave, I don't know. I may not feel good enough to stand up there and accept the award myself. So I'd appreciate it if you'd be prepared to accept it on my behalf." Of course, I said yes. I only wish he was here to share the moment. Please allow me to introduce some special guests. First, I'd like to introduce Roger's best friend and wife of 42 years, Pat Kozak. Pat, please stand. It's also my pleasure to introduce Roger's sister and brother-in-law, Jane and Ron Rada, from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Jane and Ron. I'll try to be brief, but permit me to touch briefly on why this man was so special to so many. I read not too long ago, the best things in life are never rationed. Friendship, loyalty, and love do not require coupons. Roger accomplished many great things in his life, many professional things, but he never lost sight of what was important, including friendship, loyalty, and love. Friendships were very important to him, and he had a broad range of friends at the university and the city, throughout the nation as a result of his work in Rotary. fellow sailboat enthusiasts, his Texas winter friends. He had friends everywhere. What I do know is that it didn't matter to Raj if you had an important job or made a lot of money. He just treated everyone as he would like to be treated himself. And for those of us who were privileged to call him a friend, we knew that he was never too busy, never too tired for his friends, and he never took his friends for granted. Loyalty is quite possibly the thing I admired most about Roger. If he was your friend, he was loyal to you even when you didn't deserve it, and I include myself in that category. He was a loyal employee to a series of university presidents, 5 in fact. He started out in Pierre on the staff of former university president Bowen when Dr. Bowen served as the commissioner of higher education. The Kozaks then moved to Vermilion, where Roger's USD career started under President Chuck Lean's leadership. Next was a prominent role with Roger's very dear friend, Joe McFadden, followed by his role as a confidant and advisor to Betty Turner Asher, and finally as the right-hand man to President Abbott. Roger was the consummate fixer. If you knew him, you know what I mean. And presidents usually gave Roger the most delicate and difficult tasks to deal with. President Abbott gave me permission to share a little story that proves the point of Roger's reputation. Shortly after Jim became president, he was expressing some frustration to Colette about his inability to get something done. And his daughter Nancy, who at the time was about 8 years old, but was tuned in sufficiently to the conversation to comment, said, "Well, Dad, just call Roger. Everybody else does." Finally, love. This man loved life. He was even wise enough, and yes, fortunate and blessed enough, to retire early. But that early retirement allowed Pat and him to share some very special retirement years together. His love of life and his sense of peace with his life was even apparent the day he gave my wife, Janette, and I the grim news of his prognosis. I remember we were in his living room, and he stood up and he said, "I'm going to get up every morning. I'm going to look at the sunshine through that picture window, and I'm going to love every day I'm given." Roger also shared his love and kindness with others. I think of my son and daughter, who Roger treated as his own children. Dennis and Kathy Chandler would no doubt share the same sentiment about Roger and how he treated their children. But most of all was his love for Pat. Witnessing their strong bond, particularly during the last 8 months of his life, was touching and beautiful. Roger, his main concern wasn't his health. It was Pat. And would she be okay? And Pat, bless her heart, lovingly took care of him every day and made sure that he was always treated with dignity. So, my hope tonight is that we can all learn from how Roger Kozak led his life. The best things in life are not rationed. Friendship, loyalty, and love were not rationed in Roger's life. and they should not be in ours either. Thank you.
Our next recipient, Craig Lawrence of Sioux Falls, is recognized for professional achievement. Craig began his work in journalism at USD's Volant newspaper in the mid-1960s, where he served as the news editor before graduating with his Bachelor of Journalism in 1969. After graduation, he launched his career at the Brookings Register until he became involved in television news, where he became the news director for KSOO in Sioux Falls, ultimately becoming their general manager, until he and fellow Volant alumnus Paul Schiller formed the advertising firm of Lawrence and Schiller in 1976. Under the creative leadership of Paul and Craig, the Lawrence and Schiller firm became and worked with some of the largest and most successful entities throughout the Midwest and around the country, and ultimately becoming the largest full-service agency in the Midwest. Additionally, he diversified his business interests to include research entaties and a health insurance marketing firm. In the midst of his expanding business opportunities, Craig has always made service to others a priority. He is an award-winning journalist, he's a creative sage, and now Craig Lawrence is a 2012 Alumni Award recipient.
A few minutes ago, Ted Munster came up to my table and he said, you know, an award like this is going to cost you at least $10,000. Isn't that what we like about Ted? He's so smooth and subtle. I'd just like to make a couple introductions. My 43-year partner, Miss Vanity Fair 1968, Marcia. Bloop, bloop, bloop. My 37-year business partner, Paul Schiller, and his wife, Connie. And my 56-year-old brother and his wife, Marlis. He now runs the company that Paul and I started. I came to USD in the 60s. If you remember what it was like, it was a raucous, riotous, difficult time in America. The government was drafting our fraternity brothers out of the fraternity house to Vietnam and shipping them back in pine boxes. It was a tough time. I remember Mike McGinney, Mike Michaels, there were others. It was an awful time, and it was a time in which Paul and I both arrived on campus insecure, not knowing what to do, trying to find our place in the world. In those days, there was a journalism department here, and it only had 2 professors. One of them was Roger Van Omeren, and the other one was Bob Simmons. Now, Bob took Paul under his wing and mentored him. He taught him about graphics and being a photographer, and he lived with him, critiqued his work, and taught Paul how to do things. And Roger Van Omeren took me and said, you know, I think you can write. And he nurtured me, and he edited it, and he challenged me over and over. And those 2 professors took Paul and I, and what did they ingest into us? They ingested us the belief of these words, I can. Is that not true, Paul? You can have Harvard and Yale and Princeton. Give me a prairie professor with good values who wants to invest in the lives of his students and to teach them to say, I can, and we'll change the world. That's what USD does. So if you run into Lawrence and Schiller or Paul and I or whatever, you just need to remember there were 2 people here who really cared. Who really cared. And of course I got my wife here. You know, as I courted her, we began to compare notes on things we were compatible in. And she looked at me and she said, "You know, Craig, I never got one B in college." Now, Paul and I, if you added our grade points together, you might approach something respectable. She said, "I only got one B," I should make it correct, "in all of college." And I looked at her and I said, "Gee, honey, me too." I'm very honored. Thank you. But I mean what I say. USD changed my life. When I graduated, the Brookings Register was looking for a new editor. They had 21 applicants. 20 were from the SDSU School of Journalism, and then there was me from little USD Journalism Department, and I don't know why, but they picked me. It only goes to show you can go anywhere from here. Even to Brookings. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Our third recipient is Dr. Jerry Popham, a 1985 graduate of USD School of Medicine. Dr. Popham has been widely recognized for his professional work in microsurgical techniques, specializing in ophthalmic and intraocular procedures. But tonight, he's being recognized for his public service. Dr. Popham is the founder of the About Face Foundation. For nearly 20 years, the foundation has made annual trips to Vietnam, where he has provided no-cost pediatric facial correction surgery, training for local medical staff, and medical and surgical supplies to hospitals. In addition to providing direct medical care, the foundation has worked with the Vietnamese medical community to identify the country's most promising surgeons, providing them scholarship and opportunity to train in the United States, all in keeping with the foundation's core objective, which is to participate in the active redemption of hope in those who need it most. Please join me in celebrating Dr. Jerry Popham's humanitarian service.
Thank you, Kirsten, for that kind introduction, and thank you to the University President Abbott, to the Alumni Association. Until a few minutes ago, and indeed when I walked in tonight, I was, you may have seen me, I was looking under tables. I was looking behind doors because I was sure this was a practical joke being played on me by one of my old fraternity brothers or high school buddies from Lincoln High School in Sioux Falls. But only now do I realize that I'm being honored here tonight. I am deeply grateful for that, and certainly must be the least deserving recipient in the history of this award, but thank you. I remember the day when I moved to South Dakota with my parents, who have joined me here tonight. We came to Sioux Falls in January of 1974. And I spent the first several days trying to make myself believe that 25 below zero was compatible with human life. I then spent several more days understanding that the stories my brothers had told me about snow snakes, the kind that slither under the snow and reach out through the crust and grab you and pull you down, that was not real. But through my days in South Dakota, I learned that the harshness of the climate builds character into its people, and I have taken the heart of the people of South Dakota with me everywhere I've gone. Kirsten mentioned that I'm an oculoplastic surgeon. That's kind of a hybridization between plastic surgery and ophthalmology. And many of you have never heard of that. Many physicians have never heard of that. I recently had opportunity in this political season to explain that to one of our national political leaders. Of course, I was at a fundraiser, the only way I would have access to a national political leader. And it was one of those awkward moments. I met this esteemed gentleman, and was introduced, and at that awkward moment, the crowd around me disappeared. And it was just the two of us speaking. And he said, so I understand that you're a surgeon. I said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, can you tell me about your practice? And I said, certainly. I'm an oculoplastic surgeon, so I do a variety of things, primarily on the face, but I'm primarily an eyelid surgeon. And he looked at me and he said, you know, I have never heard of an eyelid surgeon. How does a guy get interested in that? And in one of those moments of uncontained mischievousness, I looked this man right in the eye and I lied to him. I told him that in my days at the University of South Dakota in medical school, I struggled, and that I really wasn't cut out to be a physician, and that in the end, as a graduation approached, the dean came to me, not Dean Nettleman, she's new, but the dean came to me and said, listen, Popham, you know, you're really not cut out for this. I don't think you really have what it takes to be a physician, but if you will guarantee to us that you'll focus on one tiny part of the body, maybe like an eyelid, we'll let you go through. And then, of course, the joke was on me, because it was one of those moments. He was a busy man. He looked at me. I waited for the crack of a smile. I thought maybe he would understand it was a joke. Never got there. He shook my hand and said, hey, great meeting you, and he left. I've never been able to tell him anything other. But in about 1995, I worked with a group of colleagues, some from the University of Florida, some from Harvard Medical School, and we brought together a concept that we talked about for a long time. And we initiated and organized our first surgical mission to Vietnam. This was shortly after Bill Clinton ended the trade embargo with Vietnam, but before we normalized relations with Vietnam. But we began working in those days as one of the first American medical teams in Vietnam. In the years we've worked there, over the past 20 years, we have focused our efforts on teaching. We have taught many Vietnamese surgeons. We brought many of them to the U.S. and believe that if you can teach a man to fish as opposed to giving him a fish, you come out ahead. We've also focused our efforts on the weakest and the poorest in that very poor society. We've focused our efforts on children and primarily have worked in the arena of facial deformity. Those years have been very rewarding. They have brought us many patients. Over the years, we've made whole over 1,000 children now since we began our work in Vietnam. But we've done so as a manifestation of our faith and in an effort to establish a small island, perhaps a small microcosm of social justice on the planet. We view ourselves as modern-day Robin Hoods. We're all very well-paid professionals in arguably the wealthiest society that's ever existed on the planet. And we're able to redeem some of the dollars that are given to us for these children in Vietnam. It's been a great privilege and a great blessing. Tonight, I'd just like to thank a couple of people. My neighbor and friend, Darby Moses, is here. Darby is the best attorney in Denver. She and her husband, John Reeves, have been integral in our efforts in Vietnam. Though they are busy professionals and entrepreneurs in Denver, they have given their time. Both of them have been seen cleaning floors in operating rooms in Vietnam. Darby has guided us through the somewhat rough waters at times of running a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So thank you to both of you. And I'd also like to thank my wife, Dr. Nakazono. There's a joke between us. Her name is Nakazono, and sometimes she's Popham, sometimes Nakazono. But I'd like to thank Nadine. Nadine has been an inspiration in the process and has been the heart and soul of About Face. So thank you. Thank you also to my parents who surprised me with their visit here tonight. And they came from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And finally, just one more great thanks to the university. It's an honor to be a part of the University of South Dakota. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, Craig, and Jerry. As your alumni director and as a fellow alum of USD, I enjoy bringing you together across the country throughout the year. We may, as Alyssa said earlier, we may be of different eras, we may have different backgrounds, and we may have different dreams and be at different stages of our lives, but we are all a part of the same family. We are USD. Throughout our 150 years, we've been very blessed. If you think back to 150 years ago, when the leaders of Vermilion even had this idea to establish a university in a frontier town in an open prairie, it required real persistence and determination. Just imagine if they could see us tonight, how far we've come based on their dream and their determination. To those pioneers, we owe our gratitude. And throughout our history, we've been blessed to have visionary leaders, to have loyal alumni, resourceful supporters, dedicated faculty, and enthusiastically involved students who have invested themselves in this place. To their persistence and their passion, we can attribute our progress. But I think we owe them more than just our appreciation. As the alma mater says, we need to follow in the path of that brave pioneer. As we enjoy the weekend, reconnecting with friends, many of them lifelong friends that started here, and retrace our steps, I think we need to consider how we can be a part of the university's future. We owe those pioneers and those alumni who went before us more than just our appreciation. I would recommend and suggest that we owe our commitment, our pride, and our involvement. So as we reconnect with our friends, retrace those steps, I challenge each of us to think about and look now to the future and to look onward and think about what can our legacy be? What will we do with our inheritance? We hope you have a great time this weekend. We're delighted you're back. Have a good time.